Hello, everyone. My name is Sarah Johnson. I use she, her pronouns, and I am so fortunate to serve as the ACLU of Pennsylvania's Director of Philanthropy. It's my pleasure to be in virtual community with you all today. I want to start by thanking you for joining us, to the audience, to our panelists. We appreciate your willingness to give us your time and knowledge. And of course, to Reggie Schufert, our dedicated executive director. So thanks again to you all. Soon I'll pass the mic over to Reggie. He'll give us a quick welcome. We'll then take, 25 minutes or so for a presentation and a little discussion from our panelists. And then we'll close out the rest of our time for a bit of Q&A. And so with that, I'll turn the mic over to you, Reggie.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Good afternoon, everybody. We are delighted to have you joining us today, spending part of your day with us. We know that people are really busy, so we thank you so much for doing that. I'm not going to take a lot of time today, as I think it's most important to listen to our talented colleagues who are actually doing this work in the trenches, Alex Domingos, Jessica Lee, and Ari Shapell. I want to give a special thanks to those colleagues, because as I said, they're certainly very busy too. We know the amount of work each of them has on their plate. So thank you all. We appreciate your dedication. I do like to take a few minutes on these calls just to provide a broad overview of our organization and the work that we do, especially for those folks who are newer to the organization. So to that end, the ACLU is a national nonpartisan organization. We were founded over 100 years ago. One of the things that we do not do is endorse candidates for office. Here in Pennsylvania, we have a staff of roughly 40 with offices in Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and Harrisburg. And across the state, we have roughly 40,000 members. Nationwide, that number is approximately 1.75 million members. In terms of our priority areas, there are three: decarceration, of which bail reform is a part, police reform, and voting rights. And so with the recent strategic planning process, we decided that 70 to 80% of our work will be geared towards these three top priority issue areas, but to allot ourselves 20 to 30% to address other areas like LGBT equality and reproductive rights, et cetera, in order to be nimble to take on other emerging issues that don't necessarily fall within the parameters of the three priorities that I mentioned before. And all of our work, whatever the priority area is, incorporates the concept of ABIDE, which is authentic belonging, inclusion, diversity, and equity, and racial justice. So now to the good stuff. Thanks again to all the panelists for their willingness to participate in today's important discussion. And Sarah, I'm going to turn the mic right back over to you.
Thank you. As Reggie mentioned, one of our top priorities is decarceration. And one of the ways we aim to achieve this is through our work on cash bail, which is a significant driver of mass incarceration. This is not new work for the ACLU of PA. We have been doing this work for years, challenging the misuse of cash bail. In 2018, we sent a letter to Philadelphia courts raising a number of concerns based on observations of more than 2,000 bail hearings, and really urging them to follow long-established state law when setting cash bail, because all too often we find that is not the case. In 2019, when it became clear that nothing had changed, we joined a coalition of advocates and filed a lawsuit. That same year, we released a report titled Punishing Poverty, which detailed how, despite slight progress, judges in Allegheny County still set cash bail in more than 25% of cases. With our most recent report, Broken Rules, we found this issue wasn't just confined to Allegheny County. It's, of course, a statewide crisis. The ACLU of PA produced the Broken Rules report and now our new data visualization website in an effort to make the system more transparent. Our hope today is that by making the data from our report publicly accessible, this website will empower diverse stakeholders with knowledge about bail in Pennsylvania. So we hope this website will help courts, journalists, and advocates like you to better understand bail practices across the Commonwealth and build knowledge towards action. So let's get into it. So let's I want to welcome our panelists to the stage. So I'd love to hear a quick introduction. If you could share a bit about who you are, your connection to this topic, and I suppose your role in this fight. So let's start with you, Jess, and then we'll give it over to Alex, and then lastly, but certainly not leastly, Ari. So welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Jessica Lee. I'm a criminal justice policy associate at the ACLU of Pennsylvania. Over the past 3 years, I've worked on uncovering how bail drives mass incarceration across the Commonwealth. And I will turn it to Alex.
Good afternoon, everyone. Alex Domingos, he, him. I'm a senior organizer with the ACLU of Pennsylvania's Campaign for Smart Justice. Pretrial detention is one of the 4 planks of the Campaign for Smart Justice. And also, prior to my work here at ACLU, I was the founding director of Dauphin County Bail Fund. So this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. And I'll pass it to Ari.
Hi, everybody. Ari Shapell, he, him pronouns. I'm a legal fellow in my 2nd year at the ACLU of Pennsylvania. For the last about 4 or 5 years, I've been working on cash bail reform efforts, and I'm really passionate about using data to help inform our litigation. I worked as a data analyst for a number of years before I went to law school.
Great, wonderful. Thank you, 3. And Jess, I'll actually turn it right back over to you to start our presentation. So enjoy.
Thank you all again for joining us today. My colleagues and I work on cash bail reform through interviews, through public records requests, through observations of court proceedings, and I'm excited to tell you more about Broken Rules, this new interactive data tool that seeks to make bail decisions more transparent. So a quick overview of the presentation. I'm going to give a bit of background first about the project, then I'll walk through the tool itself. I'll hand it over to Ari and Alex to talk about how we've used the tool at the ACLU and how local advocates might use the tool, and then finally end with some acknowledgements. So first on some background. Every day, Pennsylvania incarcerates thousands of people who are legally innocent. About 2/3 of the more than 20,000 people held in locally run jails across the state have not been convicted of a crime. And this is not a new issue. Local advocates, journalists, academics, and some stakeholders have been drawing attention to bail. And it's an issue that's received a groundswell of attention and support in recent years. But despite this enormous public interest, we know very little about statewide bail practices. Journalists and advocates have an extremely challenging time obtaining more information. Even public officials, the people in power, face these challenges. And a story from Lehigh County exemplifies this well. In 2020, Lehigh County Controller Mark Pinsley had a public conflict with the district attorney regarding bail data. For over 5 months, Pinsley attempted to obtain and review data about how many people incarcerated in Lehigh County Jail were held because they could not afford cash bail. And as he says in the article, the lack of transparency means that we cannot explore, let alone understand, the problem at hand. And so the question becomes, why is the system so untransparent? Why is it so challenging to get a hold of basic fundamental information, even for the most diligent public officials? And there are a couple of reasons. First is simply geography. Except in Philadelphia, bail is set in one of the hundreds of local courts scattered across the state. There are more than 500 magisterial district courts, each of which functions independently. So as a result, decisions about pretrial release and detention are made by hundreds of local courts. Second, in most counties, bail hearings don't abide by a regular schedule. Sometimes these hearings happen at night. Oftentimes at these hearings, only the magisterial district judge and arrested person are present. The arrested person is in jail, and oftentimes the MDJ will preside over the hearing in their private chambers. And finally, magisterial district courts are not courts of record, meaning that there are no stenographers to record the hearing. Transcripts and digital recordings, which are produced and available at the common pleas level, don't exist in the minor judiciary. And so that's why court data is a vital tool. But accessing the court data presents its own challenges. The Administrative Office of Pennsylvania Courts captures and maintains all court data, but the data is still inaccessible in several respects. First is that these data sets are costly. AOPC can charge thousands of dollars for the time and resources spent on fulfilling a request. And it's also not widely known how to compile and submit a request. Second, data analysis requires technical expertise. Files are often large and require extensive cleaning, restructuring, and statistical knowledge. But you can't just have the technical expertise. You also need the substantive knowledge of the criminal legal system too, to make sense of what the data is telling you. You need to know how bail is set and how it fits within the broader criminal legal process. And finally, even when equipped with those necessary resources, even when you have the resources to buy and obtain the data, you have people who can sort through it, you have the substantive knowledge, it's still time and labor intensive. But thanks to the commitment and resources of the ACLU, last December, we published a research report titled Broken Rules that documents statewide bail practices based on court data from 2016 and 2017. The report found that bail is not just a Philly or Pittsburgh problem. Magisterial district courts across the state routinely set bail that people cannot afford. In our recommendations, we urge magisterial district courts to follow the rules and use bail as it was intended as a mechanism for pretrial release. And so as a companion to that report's state level findings, we developed a new website to make the data more accessible, and specifically for those who have more granular questions about a county or judge. Our goals were to make the bail decisions that keep people incarcerated across the state more visible, to empower stakeholders, including magisterial district courts, president, judges, with knowledge about their local bail practices. And finally, and ultimately, to generate dialogue about how we can stop jailing people simply because they cannot afford cash bail. And so with those goals and audiences in mind, we designed this tool to enable people to explore and answer questions such as, how often does my county set cash bail? How does my county compare to other counties? Are we above or below the state average? Are there counties leading on pretrial release and releasing a majority of people pretrial? Is bail being used as a mechanism for release? How often do people post it? Is there variation among the different courts in my county? And what is the extent of racial disparities in bail in my county? And so now I'd like to dive into the tool a little bit, which you can access at brokenrulespa.org. The site that we built is organized into 3 pages: bail trends, cash bail and race, and magisterial district judges. On the bail trends page, you'll find information about the rate of cash bail, the average amount, the rate of non-posting, and the rates of other bail types. The second page, cash bail and race, digs into the disparities in the rate and average amount of cash bail between Black and white defendants. And the third page presents the most local level of data, the rates of each bail type for each magisterial district judge. There are 3 levels of data. So we have, the statewide trend. You can also break things down by county. And then again, on the magisterial district court page, you can see each bail type for each magisterial district judge. The county profiles sort of collate all of that information presented on those 3 pages for each county. So you can sort of compare Delaware to Center to Crawford in that way. Each county profile will have, all the information on the bail trends page, followed by cash bail and race, followed by the list of magisterial district judges. We built in a few features and interactions to make the data tool interactive. And I'll walk through those here. So you can sort of hover over different visualizations to pull up more information. So for example, in this one, just using your mouse, there's a sort of cluster of points in this graph that convey how in counties, in nearly every county across Pennsylvania, MDJs set cash bail more frequently and in higher amounts for Black people than white. But if you wanted to see the county specific information, you can sort of hover over a line and that will, as you can see, highlight that information and gray everything else into the background. You can also toggle between in different places in the site to bring up different information, like here. Sometimes if you're looking for a specific county, you can search for it in the bar at the top of the visualization, like here. And that will, for example, highlight the Allegheny County circle. You can also sort and rank the different supporting tables along metrics. So for example, clicking on bail set will sort counties by the average amount of cash bail from greatest to least. So you can see here that Bucks County had the highest average amount of cash bail in the state, according to our analysis. In terms of caveats and methodology, we incorporated notes throughout the site where further detail and explanation were helpful in order to understand what the visualization is conveying. So for example, under this visualization in the bail trends page, we have a note underneath that makes clear that the average amount we calculated did not take into account percentage bail. We also have a blurb at the bottom of each page that says the the visualizations reflect trends from 2016 and 17 to make clear the time frame of the data, and to check out the report for our methodology. If you have any further questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. We'll list our contact information, info@aclupa.org at the end of the event. The last part of the website I'd like to draw your attention to are the resources that are available at the bottom banner of each page. So we have links to different websites where you can find your local judge. Under this Learn More section, we provide ACLU assets, as well as other research produced by the Pennsylvania Department of Corrections, the Vera Institute, and the Prison Policy Initiative, if you would like to learn more. And finally, links to all the bail funds in Pennsylvania that are doing the work of releasing people who cannot afford to pay cash bail. So that is sort of the background and a walkthrough of this new data tool. I want to hand it over to Ari and Alex to talk about how we've used the tool at the ACLU and how local advocates might use it as well.
Thanks, Jess. So in late April of this year, we filed a lawsuit in federal court that challenged the way that Lancaster County and several of its MDJs were assigning cash bail. And our decision to sue Lancaster and the specific 4 MDJs that we chose was informed by the data work that Jess and others performed. So like Jess mentioned, there are 67 counties in Pennsylvania. There's over 500 MDJs, and given the transparency issues and the geographical issues that Jess was talking about, and the fact that we have limited resources, we didn't have the capacity to court watch and substantively investigate every single MDJ. Instead, we turned to Jess's report and we supplemented it with more up-to-date data, and that allowed us to analyze bail practices in each of those counties and each of those MDJ courtrooms. Through that analysis, we were able to pinpoint Lancaster as a potential target for litigation because we found that accused people there were regularly being assigned really high cash bail amounts that were causing them to be held in pretrial detention. And also that a large proportion of people that were going before MDJs were being assigned cash bail instead of other less restricted types of bail. So we then used the tool to drill down and identify the MDJs with the most concerning bail practices in the specific county. And so the data really provided us with this great starting point for our litigation. But it's important that we don't rely on data alone. So once we identified Lancaster as a target for litigation, we worked closely with local advocates like the wonderful folks from the Lancaster Bail Fund and other criminal legal system stakeholders to really better understand the landscape. And then we conducted frequent visits to the Lancaster County Prison where we interviewed people who were held on cash bail to hear their stories. And that gave us the information we needed to really confidently go and select Lancaster and the 4 specific defendant MDJs that we selected for our lawsuit. So data, it plays a really important part in helping us start litigation. It also allows us to monitor how counties are doing after we sue. And so we're able to use the AOPC data to see, how is our litigation impacted practices already. The lawsuit is still ongoing, but we were able to see that MDJs were setting smaller dollar amounts of cash bail after we filed our lawsuit, but that a number of MDJs were still really heavily relying on cash bail, which shows us that there's still a lot more work to be done through our litigation. So that's just a little bit about how we use data in our litigation. I'll turn it over to Alex to talk about how ADVO uses data.
Yeah, thanks, Ari. And I think this tool is incredibly important and incredibly useful in allowing advocates to shine a light on magisterial district judges and local court systems and their activities, and to really highlight this process that is often extremely opaque and operates almost automatically, right? It's sort of in the shadows. Bail setting hearings are often incredibly quick. And we found, and other court watching programs have found, that often ability to pay, which is supposed to be strongly considered, if not the main factor, is often neglected in these hearings. So we hope that by shining a light on some of this data and these practices, we can challenge the practice of bail and contrast it with the sort of the constitutional and legal requirements that cash bail is supposed to follow, and pretrial detention is supposed to follow in Pennsylvania law. Often, whenever advocates attend, commissioners' meetings or prison board meetings, local administrators will say that there's no bail problem, but often are unable to provide data. So thankfully, this tool can be used as sort of a baseline where we have data from this data set from these years. We can ask specific questions like, how has our pretrial jail population risen or fallen since this time period? How have racial disparities persisted or hopefully gotten better in that time period? And allows us to do sort of a one-to-one comparison, as opposed to just sort of taking pronouncements by criminal justice stakeholders at face value. I can just say from experience, it can often be very difficult trying to pry this data out, whether by asking for it from the county or doing sort of a painstaking work of one by one going through the dockets in the AOPC system. I can tell you from personal experience, it takes a very long time, and it's very difficult to get a systemic view. So having these comparison points from county to county and in specific MDJs is very useful. Some of you may have seen a previous program we have done about magisterial district judge accountability, sort of teaching what they do. And this tool can be useful for that as well. We have mentioned before that MDJs often run unopposed, often in elections that don't receive a lot of votes, don't receive a lot of attention. So again, we hope that this tool can be an accountability mechanism, since often MDJs are elected over and over again. The ones that are still in office, we will have a direct comparison point and hopefully be able to hold them accountable for their bail setting practices. So again, hopefully this tool can encourage court watching programs as another tool of accountability to sort of get in the courtrooms. Although, as my colleague Jessica mentioned, it can be very difficult because there's no regular schedule for those hearings. Hopefully this can sort of spur court watching programs as another tool of accountability. Can provide advocates a baseline, a comparison point. It will hopefully encourage magisterial district judges and court systems to be more transparent. Hopefully it can be used as a tool of district attorney accountability to encourage them to engage in bail review practices and ultimately lead to decarceration. Oftentimes in your local county jails, a significant, if not a majority of the population will be there being held pretrial, not adjudicated to be guilty. So especially in the sort of COVID reality, if there's ways that we can decarcerate and hold less people in cages, we want to encourage that. And this tool will be, I know in my practice and hopefully in our practice as well, will be vital in encouraging that decarceration. So I'll pass it back to Jess.
Thanks so much, Alex. And thank you all for being here. I wanted to end the presentation with a few acknowledgements to the people who made this project possible. This website was designed by Rong Xiang. It was engineered by Arjun Pathakuchi, Mario Axiote, and Alex Graves. The data analysis was performed by Shweta Chopra, Roshan Santosh, Mark Rockhorst, Shubham Anadante, Yunong Huang, and Juliana Zhou and Josh Williams. I just wanted to thank you for joining, and our supporters for making this work possible. It takes volunteer partnerships, time, poring over data, expertise, and commitment. None of that would be possible without your support. So thank you.
Wow, thank you for that. It takes a village, right? It takes a community. This work is not done in a silo. So actually, I want to welcome you all back to this stage, if you wouldn't mind turning your videos on, and I suppose we could even unshare the screen maybe to see us all. We've got a number of really great questions, so we'll just kick it off. We'll start kind of broad. Is cash bail system the same nationwide? Who wants to take it?
I can start us off. So no, bail works differently in each state, and as you can see from the data, it can work differently in each county or each local judge. In some states like New Jersey, for example, they've done away with cash bail entirely. And instead, most accused people are presumed releasable and are only held in pretrial detention if prosecutors can show that they should be held. So the onus is on the prosecutors to prove that the person should be held. But the reality is that in most states, cash bail is still available in some or all circumstances. And even a number of states still use bail schedules, which list out a default amount of bail for a given category of crimes that are charged. And in practice, whether a judge sets cash bail in a particular case and the amount that they assign comes down to the discretion of that individual judge. And so most judges are conscientious and many are guided by the Constitution and the rules, but some judges might assign cash bail for reasons that don't align with the rules or the Constitution, or they might want to keep someone in pretrial detention, but instead of going through the hoops of denying bail entirely, they'll set an entirely impossibly high bail amount. So it really differs across the U.S. and across individual courts.
Okay, great. We'll move on. We got a number of questions about data, so we'll spend a little bit of time there. We'll start with a fun one. Was there anything surprising? Any surprise findings from the data?
I don't know if it's a surprise that bail is a statewide problem. It's not a Philly, Pittsburgh problem. Counties, rural and urban, blue and red, routinely set cash bail that people cannot afford. I might say that, there are some judges who never once set ROR, but I think what's surprising and encouraging is that some counties are using bail as pretrial release, and they are showing that you can release people broadly without jeopardizing public safety or lowering the rate of future court appearance. And those counties and those specific judges that are leading on pretrial release show that bail reform is reasonable, it's possible, it's what other counties should be moving toward as well. So I would say that's what surprised me the most. Those counties and judges that are using bail in a constitutional, thoughtful way.
I also thought it was a little surprising, I think, sort of the spread or disparities within the same counties often. Like you may have a city where one MDJ is setting like super high rates of cash bail, whereas another one rarely ever sets it. So just how individualized the decisions are, and really how important like who your MDJ is, because it's not like every MDJ in a county is clustered together. There can be some really wide variations.
Interesting. Will the tool be updated with the newest data when it becomes available?
Yes, I'm happy to take that one. That's a good question. So although the ACLU may produce future research, brokenrulespa.org is a static site and will not be updated with more current data. And I know some people may ask why the time frame is 2016 to 2017, why not more recent? And that's largely because in 2019, Pennsylvania passed Clean Slate, a law that automatically expunges and seals certain criminal records from public view. And Clean Slate is a great law. It was designed to help people with certain criminal convictions regain access to employment, education, and housing, because criminal records can be a stigma and prohibit people from re-entering society. But as a result of Clean Slate, public data requested after 2019 may exclude a broad swath of cases and potentially distort the data analysis. And so, given the unclear, potentially far-reaching impact of Clean Slate on public data requests, we decided to publish the report using an earlier data set that is not impacted by Clean Slate.
There's a question, is the underlying data from the report available for download?
It is not currently available for download, but I encourage people to reach out to us after the event, and maybe we can work out some sort of solution.
Okay, thank you. So I'll point you all to that info@aclupa.org email again. So let's talk about, who gets bail awarded to them. Is it the person who seems most innocent? Is the question we've received.
I can take a first crack at that. So under our state's constitution, all accused people are entitled to release on bail, except for people in a very narrow set of circumstances, which are people charged with murder, people who are a danger to the community, and people who are reasonably likely not to appear at their criminal proceedings. So the rules of criminal procedure in Pennsylvania give MDJs a lot of discretion to choose the conditions of bail necessary to ensure that an accused person will appear at all their subsequent criminal proceedings and will comply with the terms of their bail bonds, including refraining from committing any additional crimes. The MDJ is required to consider a broad range of information, including the charges, the accused person's age, their character, their family life, their employment, housing, mental health history, criminal record, a whole bunch of other things, and use that information to come up with the right type of bail. If the MDJ goes down the list and says that all the other less restrictive forms of bail, like release on recognizance or unsecured bail bond, are not going to do the job, the MDJ can set cash bail, but they have to set it in a reasonable amount. And they do that by inquiring into the accused person's financial situation. The rules explicitly prohibit MDJs from assigning cash bail for the sole purpose of ensuring that the person stays incarcerated as they await their trial. So in short, bail is awarded to people, should be awarded to people based off of a variety of information about them, and cash bail should only be assigned in limited circumstances and only once the MDJ has enough information to figure out how much the person can afford of cash bail.
Thank you. It's another one from the Q&A. Do we know whether changes such as DA Krasner in Philly or in pretrial policies in Northampton County have made significant changes in cash bail practices?
That's a good question. I don't know if we have the information available to answer it right now. Since 2017, the bail reform movement has grown. A global pandemic happened. New judges were elected under new leadership. Potentially, counties implemented new policies and procedures. It's sort of unclear how local bail practices might have worsened, changed, improved as a result of all of those factors. I will say that anecdotally, we've heard that some counties used less cash bail and started releasing people during the pandemic as a sort of public health measure, and realized that they could do that. Like, not only could they release more people and not cage so many people pre-trial, but they could also save a lot of money, a lot of taxpayer dollars by avoiding incarceration. And so we hope that that's a trend that continues. I hope that Northampton has experienced a decline in its cash bail rate, but again, that's why the transparency is at the crux of this issue. I encourage public officials, the courts, local court systems, to make this information more accessible.
And I do appreciate, if I can just hop onto that as well, I do appreciate the questioner sort of highlighting the role of district attorneys here in requesting bail. And I would encourage you to look at our colleagues at the Philadelphia Bail Fund have done some of their own analysis on District Attorney Krasner's bail setting practices. So I think that it's complicated, and it's worth, again, using tools like this and advocating to see hard data to sort of compare rhetoric versus what's happening on the ground in these bail setting hearings.
Thank you. So next, what key people have the power to eliminate cash bail, either locally or at the state level?
I'm happy to jump in first. In our report, we urge, first and foremost, magisterial district judges to follow the rules, to use bail as a mechanism for pretrial release, to set release on recognizance in far more cases. If other restrictive conditions or other bail types are necessary to ensure someone's appearance, then they should ensure that cash bail is affordable, they can pay it, and they can be released. So first and foremost, magisterial district judges, your local judge has the power to end pretrial, unnecessary pretrial detention. But we also urge the AOPC to make bail more transparent by providing public data. Third, president judges who have the sole responsibility of providing oversight over the minor judiciary. As we talked about earlier, the bail system is exceedingly fragmented in Pennsylvania. And so president judges have this incredibly important responsibility of overseeing their local judges. And so encouraging and empowering president judges to exercise oversight to examine their local bail practices. And of course, local jails and courts should work together to make sure that anyone who is incarcerated on bail they can't afford, their case should be reviewed immediately. So the court system, if it's appropriate, can release that person pending trial. So I would say magisterial district judges first and foremost, president judges, AOPC, and sort of jails and court system in collaboration.
Thank you, Jess. Let's talk a little bit more on taking action. One of the questions we got in the Q&A is, why should the community care about this tool?
I think that the community should care because these are our neighbors, our loved ones, our fellow community members. I think we found that especially during the height of the pandemic, jails are not places where folks can social distance. Local county jails, folks are coming home. So what happens in county jails doesn't stay there, right? So if we can minimize unnecessary detention in them, that's for the best. I think if you want to look at the economic argument, as taxpayers, right, we are paying to fund our often overcrowded local jails. So they affect your county's budgets. That could, those funds that are used to cage people could be used for all sorts of other things in your community to help empower folks and care for local community there, invest in local anti-violence programs or housing or what have you. And these are folks that we are electing, right? All the folks that have power in this realm are all elected officials. So part of our civic duty is being aware of what the folks elected to act in our name are up to.
Thank you, Alex. Okay, we've got a question. How are president judges chosen, and to whom are they accountable for MDJ bail practices?
I will give that a shot. President judges aren't really accountable to anyone except for the Supreme Court, which has the overall authority over Pennsylvania's judiciary. But the Pennsylvania Code gives president judges those specific powers of oversight. And I don't know if some president judges may not realize that they can order procedural audits, they can review bail data, they can conduct court observations themselves to examine bail in their counties. So we're really relying on their sort of leadership in providing oversight of magisterial district courts.
Is the ACLU looking for help or support collecting more recent cash bail data or other types of court data?
If that is an offer for help, thank you. We appreciate that. Like I mentioned before, so much of this work is thanks to our volunteer partnerships, our allies on the ground, our incredible staff, our supporters. We, in terms of future research, I would definitely love to connect. Please get in touch with the information we'll provide at the very end about collaborating on future research.
And we're also happy to connect with folks that are working on this from an advocacy sort of angle. If you're interested in advocating for more transparency or court watching or what have you, be happy to connect and support those efforts as well.
Great. I'm looking at the clock and I want to be mindful of everybody's time. And I see a wonderful question to round us out. And if I know we've missed some, so we'll come back to those. We'll keep record of the questions we weren't able to get to. But outside of donating to the ACLU to continue to help support this work and all of your work, how can I find a bail fund to donate to?
Well, I believe Jeff said they're going to provide some links to local bail funds. There is also the National Bail Fund Network, which I believe all the Pennsylvania bail funds are a part of, which has a directory of Pennsylvania bail funds. But yeah, we will send out that information, or you can also check out the National Bail Fund Network as well.
Great. Well, thank you. Any parting words from our panelists? Put you on the spot.
I just want to thank everyone again for taking the time to learn more about this project, to hear from my colleagues. We hope it will be helpful in pushing judges to follow the rules and push for bail reform. Thank you.
Yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for all those great questions. We'll be in touch to address the others. Thanks to the folks that showed up in the space to learn in community with us. And thank you to Reggie, again, Alex, Jess, and Ari for being with us today. We appreciate you all offering up your time, especially when I know it's definitely demanded elsewhere. So an extra huge thanks to Sam Jen, who's been keeping us all organized behind the scenes and running the tech. We could not do this without you. And also for those in the audience, we would love your feedback. So please make sure to fill out the survey that Sam will be posting in the chat if she hasn't already. We are grateful for your past and continued support of our work. We could not do it without you. If you enjoyed today's webinar and are able to give a gift today, please do visit our website to make a donation, www.aclupa.org/donate. And with that, we will end the call for today. So thanks, everyone. Be well, and I wish you a great rest of your week. Enjoy the sun.